All right, let's dive into one of history's greatest puzzles. We're talking about a man who is, without a doubt, a founding father of Western philosophy, but who never actually wrote down a single word of it.
So how does that even work? I mean, really, think about that. How did the ideas of a guy from ancient Athens, who couldn't even write, end up shaping the very way we think about truth and justice and knowledge itself almost 2,500 years later? Well, that is the incredible mystery of Socrates.
To really get him, you have to picture it. We're going back to the loud, crowded marketplace of ancient Athens. And you can forget those perfect marble statues you've seen. The real Socrates, well, he was a bit of an oddball. Just imagine the scene. You've got these powerful politicians and decorated generals, all puffed up, talking about big, important things. And then this guy, barefoot, wearing what are basically rags, shuffles right up to them. He doesn't want money, he doesn't want power. He just wants to ask a question. Something simple like, "Hey, excuse me, General, you talk a lot about courage, but what is it actually?"
And this simple phrase, this is his whole starting point. You see, while everyone else in Athens, especially the so-called experts, were walking around acting like they had all the answers, Socrates started with this really radical admission. He basically said, the first step to being wise is realizing just how little you actually know. And that deep sense of humility, that was the engine for his legendary technique, the Socratic method. Now, this wasn't about him winning an argument or showing off how smart he was. No. It was more like a shared journey, a way to chip away at all the fuzzy ideas and assumptions to get to something true. It's like a way to debug our own brains, which, let's be honest, is a skill we need now more than ever.
Okay, so let's see how it actually works. He'd start with a simple definition. The general might say, easy. Courage is standing your ground and never retreating. Socrates would nod, and then he'd poke at it with a question. Okay, but what about a strategic retreat to lure an enemy into a trap? Wouldn't you say that's also a courageous and pretty wise move? And boom, just like that, the general's simple definition starts to fall apart. The point wasn't to make him look stupid, but to get him to see that our first ideas are usually way too simple.
So you have to wonder, why did he spend all day doing this? I mean, why would you want to walk around Athens just annoying the most powerful people in the city? Well, because for Socrates, this wasn't some quirky hobby. It was the entire point of being alive.
And that brings us to his most famous line, something he said during his own trial when his life was literally on the line. The unexamined life is not worth living. For Socrates, a life spent just going through the motions, on autopilot, without ever stopping to question your own beliefs, your own actions, that was a life completely wasted. He basically saw two paths for every single person. On one side, you have the unexamined life. That's where you're just run by social pressure. You chase money and fame because, well, that's what everyone else is doing. It's kind of robotic. But the examined life? That's about looking inward. It's about asking why. Why do you believe what you believe? It's about what Socrates called caring for your soul, your actual character, your integrity, and putting that above everything else. Socrates had this brilliant metaphor for his whole mission. He called himself the gadfly of Athens. He saw the city as this big, noble, but kind of lazy horse, and he believed the gods had sent him, this annoying little fly, to just keep biting it, to sting it, to keep it from dozing off and falling into a lazy, unthinking sleep.
But, as you can probably guess, nobody likes being stung. And after decades of his non-stop questioning, that lazy horse of Athens was finally ready to swat the fly. And that leads us to one of the most famous and infamous trials in all of history.
You really have to understand the context here. Athens was on its knees. It had just lost a horrible, decades-long war with Sparta. The city was paranoid, insecure, and unstable. In this climate of fear, you had these new teachers called sophists getting really popular. They were basically consultants who taught that truth doesn't really matter. All that matters is winning the argument. So when Socrates shows up, a guy looking for absolute truth who refuses to take any money, he's a huge threat. His constant questioning didn't feel like helpful advice anymore. It felt like a dangerous attack on a city that was already falling apart.
So, at 70 years old, Socrates gets dragged to court on two official charges. First, impiety, which basically meant not respecting the city's gods. And second, the really dangerous one, corrupting the youth of Athens by teaching them to question everything, including their parents and the government.
Now, any normal person would have brought their crying wife and kids to court to beg the jury for mercy, but not Socrates. Oh no! Instead of apologizing, he gave a defense of his entire life's work. He didn't back down an inch.
He basically argued that his questioning was the single most valuable thing anyone could do for the city.
Yeah, the jury of 501 citizens, they weren't buying it. To them, it just sounded like pure arrogance. They voted him guilty. He was then given a chance to suggest his own punishment, a way to save his own skin with a fine or maybe exile. You know what he proposed instead? He said that for his service to Athens, he should get free meals for life at the state's expense, an honor they gave to Olympic champions. That pretty much sealed his fate. The jury was so insulted, they voted for death.
Even then, in prison, his friends had an escape plan ready to go. His friend Creta was begging him, pleading with him to run for his family, for his own life. But Socrates refused, and his reason shows his philosophy in action. He argued that he lived his whole life under the laws of Athens. To escape now would be to break his contract with the city. It would be answering their injustice with an injustice of his own. He would not compromise his principles, not even to save his own life.
And so, surrounded by his heartbroken friends, Socrates calmly drank a cup of poisoned hemlock. He was steady and clear-headed right to the very end. But in dying that way, he accomplished something he never could have in life. His death was a game-changer. It transformed him from a weird local character into a martyr for truth and philosophy. By choosing to die rather than abandon his beliefs, he showed the world that some ideas are worth more than life itself. In a way, his execution was the final, undeniable proof of his philosophy's power.
And honestly, his legacy is everywhere. The entire scientific method is basically built on Socratic questioning. His incredible ethical integrity became the blueprint for civil disobedience, inspiring leaders from Gandhi to Martin Luther King Jr. And that central quest of his, to know thyself, well, that's still the driving force behind so much of philosophy, psychology, and our own personal growth today.
And just think about it for a second. We're living in an age of information overload, of social media echo chambers, and just straight-up fake news. The Socratic method, that habit of questioning your assumptions, demanding evidence, and challenging your own beliefs, has never been a more vital tool for navigating the world.
In the end, Socrates didn't leave us with a neat list of answers. He left us with a method. He gave us the tools to clear away all the noise and really examine our own lives. So the question he leaves behind, the one that still rings so true today, is what are we going to do with those tools?